Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jason. This is RV Miles. I'm not Miles, I'm Jason. And here we cover the latest in RV and camping news, along with gear tips and how to's and a whole lot more. On this episode, something a little different. I get lots of comments on these videos that run the gamut from great questions to honest criticisms to absolute lunacy, and everything in between. And often those comments and questions are repeated by several people, which tells me either I wasn't clear on something or there's more I can add. And sometimes I'm completely wrong about something and I need to correct that. So, on this video, we're going to address a few comments from recent videos. First, I want to take a look at two things I missed in the video I did last week on your fifth wheel's pin weight and its relationship to payload. This is going to apply if you're towing a conventional travel trailer as well. I missed two things here when chatting about weighing your rig and estimating your weight, and you asked some great questions about that. The first was from mile marker members Tina and Robert, who asked, where is a full tank of gas to be counted, in the payload or the unloaded vehicle weight? We've heard different things on this. Thank you so much for asking that, because I did miss this. When you go weigh your whole rig with everything loaded down, you do want to have a full tank of fuel on board, because the payload of your truck is determined including a full tank of fuel, which is great. You have all that extra payload. You don't have to account for the fuel. But when you go and weigh yourself without the fuel in there, it will make you think you have more room than you do. So you do want to be completely loaded, including having the family on board and having a full tank of fuel. Again, same goes with water, like I said in the video, but we had a great question on that as well. Can you explain the cargo carrying capacity in regards to the freshwater capacity? I've seen it explained two ways. One, the cargo carrying capacity includes the weight of a full tank, and two, the fresh tank weight needs to be subtracted from the cargo carrying capacity. So yeah, this is actually something I should clarify. What I said in the video was that you need to account for water weight. So the water that you put in your tank is not included in your cargo carrying capacity. So if you're adding 60 gallons of water, you do need to account for that 500 pounds of water weight. Water weighs 8 1/3 pounds per gallon. On most RVs, some brands don't include the water in the cargo carrying capacity, or I should say they do include it. They've accounted for it. So they might have a smaller cargo carrying capacity listed on the sticker, but they have already calculated in a full tank of water. That's kind of been going by the wayside in recent years, but I believe there are some brands that still do that. Regardless, it's going to say that right on the sticker. And if it's not the sticker that's on the driver's side of the vehicle, often there's a sticker inside the door frame of the RV that will talk about the cargo carrying capacity and the water weight as well. Great question. Sticking with trucks and towing, I also did a video recently on tow haul mode and when to use it. And it's been one of the most popular videos we've done in the last year. So apparently a lot of people had a lot of questions on when to use tow haul mode. One of the questions I got was, does tow haul mode have a certain weight criteria? And this is something I should have addressed in the video. Yeah, because tow haul mode it's essentially a tune. It's a vehicle tune. It's changing the shift points. It's doing lots of other stuff. I actually learned other things from you guys in the comments that I didn't know. Like, for instance, when you put tow haul mode on in some trucks, it lengthens the amount of time your turn signal stays on when you do the lane change turn signal, where it's just the short flash of the turn signal. It might go from 3 seconds to 7 seconds or something like that. There are lots of things in your manual that you can learn about tow haul mode. Read it. There's lots of information in there. And one of the things that you might find in your manual, this is actually not in the manual of my F350, I don't believe, although I don't think I've read the manual of this one. I've read the manual of the 2021 truck I owned. I should read the manual of the one I own now. But here, looking at a Silverado HD manual, I do get some information about what tow haul mode is considering when it comes to weight. I've seen lots of stuff in forums on the internet that people are saying, well, you don't need to use tow haul mode, or you shouldn't use tow haul mode until you are towing 70% of your vehicle's capacity. And I think what I'm about to read here is where that mistake comes from, because that's absolutely not true. You can use tow haul mode at any point. It's tuned to work best when you're towing 75% of your vehicle capacity. I assume it's the same with other brands. Maybe it's not exactly 75%, but that's where Chevy sets it at. And this is what they say. Tow haul mode is designed to be most effective when the vehicle and trailer combined weight is at least 75% of the vehicle's gross combined weight rating. See trailer weight, blah, blah, blah. Tow haul mode is most useful when towing a heavy trailer or carrying a large or heavy load through rolling terrain, in stop and go traffic, and in busy parking lots. Operating the vehicle in tow haul mode when lightly loaded or not towing will not cause damage. However, it's not recommended and may result in unpleasant engine and transmission driving characteristics, heavier light steering efforts, and reduced fuel economy. So remember, the downfall of tow haul mode is fuel economy. It slightly reduces your fuel economy. Something else I learned reading the Chevy manual is that if you have the, whatever they call it, the electric overlay steering, where there's an electric motor, the heavy duty trucks don't have drive by wire like the lighter duty trucks might have. And lots of cars have these days, because of the weight that they need to carry. And what they have instead often is an electric overlay motor, which assists you in turning on top of your standard power steering. It's tightening or loosening the steering depending on the speed you're going. If you have lane keeping assist on your heavy duty truck, you have this. So Chevy is saying tow haul mode is tightening that up a bit, making it easier to help you turn the vehicle when you've got a heavy load behind you. So if you have tow haul mode on, you're not carrying a heavy weight, it might adjust the steering characteristics in a way that you might not like. Bottom line, read the manual, and that 75% number is just the optimal weight. It's where it's the most effective. After that, it doesn't mean you can't use it before that. You should use tow haul mode whenever it feels the most comfortable to do so. All right, a lot more in a moment, including some really fun stuff. But first, this episode is sponsored by our friends over at RVmattress.com by Brooklyn Bedding. You get 30% off an RV mattress for being an RV Miles viewer. That's 30% off with code RV Miles at RVmattress.com. RVmattress.com is the RV arm of Brooklyn Bedding, a real mattress company that makes mattresses in sizes ideal for RVs. You got the short queens, the short kings, the camper king. You got the different thicknesses that you might need to consider if you got a slide that closes over your bed or something like that. Lots of different options available over at RVmattress.com by Brooklyn Bedding. Their mattresses are made in their factory in Arizona, shipped to you wherever you are, vacuum sealed, and you just open them up and let them expand, and you're off to the races. They have a 120-night sleep trial, and they're toxin-free, and they are great mattresses. We've had them in our last couple RVs. We're putting RV mattresses in our new RV, and we even have Brooklyn Bedding mattresses in our home. Again, head over to rvmattress.com/RVMiles and use the code RVMiles for 30% off. That is the best deal that they ever offer. That's the best deal you're going to get on a mattress from rvmattress.com. 30% off with code RVMiles. All right, let's turn to some questions or comments from our most recent news videos. There's been a couple contentious videos in the last couple of weeks. Our final news roundup video for January sparked lots of heated discussion, which is no surprise because it was about potential effects on national parks and other public lands under newly installed President Donald Trump. So let me start off by saying I made a cheeky reference about Denali being renamed Mount McKinley, and the fact that Denali is actually the tallest mountain in the world and not Everest. And I said, go look it up. And a lot of you did. Look, I'm just trying to get some engagement there. But the reality is that this is one of those things that's more complicated than people think it is. Denali is actually taller than Mount Everest. Everest is the highest from sea level, but from its base to its summit, Denali is significantly taller than Everest, and above sea level, it is the tallest mountain in the world. Now, if you start measuring underwater, Mauna Kea in Hawaii is the tallest mountain in the world, but you got to dive down deep and start measuring way below sea level. And I suppose that really is the tallest mountain in the world, considering, hey, if I am, this is an example that I used in the comments, if I'm me and I go to an NBA game and I'm sitting up in the cheap seats, That doesn't make me taller than the NBA players. I'm higher than the NBA players, but I'm not taller than them. Similarly, if I go to the beach with some NBA players and one of them stands in the water and they're down under the water to their waist, and I'm standing up above them, doesn't make me taller than them. So I put that out there because it's fun. But my big mantra is always, I think people need to think more deeply into things. There's more complexity in the world than people think. And don't just take for granted what somebody tells you, like Mount Everest being the tallest mountain in the world. In fact, the reality of being the highest from sea level is kind of meaningless, right? Because highest from sea level doesn't mean furthest from the center of the earth either. There's other options as well around the world that actually have peaks that are further from the center of the earth. It's not important, folks. Tallest, highest, biggest doesn't really matter. And I think that's the point. So one of the stories in that video was about the reduction in seasonal workers, potentially seasonal workers not being hired in national parks for this coming season. And there have been thousands of people who have had their seasonal offers rescinded. And a lot of you chimed in, even though I mentioned this in the video, to say that actually began last year under President Biden. I said this in the video, but I'm going to say it again. The Forest Service cut seasonal jobs under President Biden. And President Biden, deserves to hold that under his shoulders for a couple of reasons. A, he was the president when that happened, and the president is in charge of all the federal land agencies. Now, the Forest Service made that decision because they didn't have the money to hire seasonal workers this year. So there's not going to be, as far as I know yet, seasonal workers in Forest Service lands this year. And that's because the Forest Service didn't get the funding that they needed from Congress last year. But part of the reason they didn't get the funding they needed from Congress is President Biden raised the minimum wage for federal workers, which strained the Forest Service's budget, and they didn't have the room to hire seasonal workers for this year. I'm not here to place blame. I'm here to tell you what is happening in the world. President Trump has cut federal jobs. That much is clear. Many of you are very angry that I've mentioned this and saying that I'm gaslighting the community talking about this, but President Trump is proud of the fact that he's reducing the federal workforce. And I assume people that support that position don't think he's hiding it. I don't see anywhere where he's hiding the fact that he's trying to reduce the federal workforce. That's what's happening. You can agree with that or not, but my job is just to tell you what's happening. Of course, I have opinions on it. But when I'm sitting here, I've got my hat on that says, hey, I'm just telling you the facts. This is what's happening. You might support that decision. You might hate that decision. But I'm just here telling you what's going on in the world. And the fact is that, yes, there will be fewer people running the national parks this year. Many of you had lots of excuses like, well, actually, most of the workers in national park are contractors. If you go to Yellowstone, there's like 3,000 people that work for Xanterra. Yeah, that's Yellowstone. The vast majority of national parks are not Yellowstone. There will be a reduction in workers working in national parks. A lot of you saying they're all volunteers. This is not affecting the volunteers. This guy says seasonal workers in national parks are 100% foreign students whom are looking for a fake marriage on day one of their arrival. I don't even think foreigners are allowed to work in national parks for the federal government. Nice misinformation. The news about seasonal workers has been known for months, but hey, let's wait for Trump to make a video to blame him. You have no integrity. It's President Trump. Show some respect. Like, this is the thing. This is what people hear news. This is everybody. This is liberals, conservatives, people who hate the government in general. This is everybody. We get in these bubbles, these silos, and we hear what's being reported. And if it's not what we think should be happening, it's not what we like, if it's against somebody that we voted for, it's what's called a choice supportive bias or a purchase rationalization. You see this on Amazon a lot. A lot of people think the Amazon ratings of products are lower than the product actually deserves. You'll hear this a lot from people who make the products. They think people only go to review things to complain. Well, the reality is actually the reviews probably are higher than they should be because we go on Amazon or Yelp or whatever it is, and we want to support the decision we made. I bought this vacuum cleaner. Therefore, I'm going to give it 5 stars because I made the right decision. If the guy I voted for did something that maybe I wouldn't have liked a year ago, Well, maybe I kind of agree with it because I made the decision to vote for that person. So I'm rationalizing my decision to vote for that person by saying I agree with what they're saying. We got to stop doing that, folks. Politicians are not gods. Politicians are not superheroes. They're not people to be worshiped. They're people to work for us. And we're going to agree with some of the decisions they make, and we're going to disagree with some of the decisions they make. And we need to find that common sense again, or we are just going to lose it all. But for the guy that said it's President Trump, show some respect. Well, actually, standard media protocol is for you to mention the name with the title first. So you start off in a news story by saying US President Donald Trump, XYZ. And then in future mentions of that person, you say Mr. Trump or you say Trump. That's how it's supposed to be. It's actually totally fine for somebody to not say President Trump and just say Trump. That's totally cool. But people like that who just want you to respect their superhero, there's no rationalizing that. Another common one I get when I do a national park video, there's two different themes on this. One being that China owns all the national parks or a significant part of the national parks. Nothing more could be further from the truth. But a version of that I heard on this last video was also the UN controls 50% of the national parks. Not true. What that person is getting at, when other people will mention often, is the World Heritage sites. And there are certain rules that we agree to when we put a site up to be a World Heritage site. That does not mean the UN owns that site. It just means we agree to do certain things, namely, keeping that site as it is and respecting its historical significance. But nobody owns those sites, and we could do whatever we want with them whenever. We could pull them from being a World Heritage site and tear them down if we decided to. A more reasonable comment on these lines, though, this is something that I also hear a lot. Under the 10th Amendment, the federal government has no constitutional authority to have any parks. The federal government ignored that and just declared most of the land in the West as theirs. So this comes from the story we did about Wyoming and Utah wanting the federal government to hand them back some of the federal land that is in those states because they would prefer to control that land. The reality is why the federal government has control of so much land in the West is because that was agreed to when those states became states. The federal government purchased all of that land, and they sold much of it off to people and businesses, or allowed people and businesses to have much of that land over the years. And when those states became states, the charter allowing that state to be formed made sure to cede that land to the federal government, so the federal government would always have control over that land. Those lands have never been part of those states or taken away from those states, except for when they've been taken away from Native Americans. But this has always been the case. And there is no reason that these states should be saying that something was taken from them at some point in time. If somebody's telling you that, they're wrong. Okay, back to the RV industry. This one is about the news roundup I did after the Florida RV Super Show in Tampa, which I called cheekily in the thumbnail, the Super Bowl of RVs. This person says, as I understand it, the Super Bowl of RV shows is the manufacturer show held in Hershey, Pennsylvania every year. It's a manufacturer show, not a dealer show designed to sell units. The manufacturer shows off all the new models and gear. They do not make sales at this show. The manufacturer show is way bigger than any dealer show, and that's what the Florida show is. So I don't want to talk down to this person, but you've heard these things, and they're wrong. But you're partially right. Both shows are manufacturer shows. The Hershey RV show in Pennsylvania, which happens in September usually, and the Florida RV Super Show that happens in January in Florida, in Tampa, are both run by the RV manufacturers, and they are the only two major RV shows that are organized and run by the RV manufacturers. There used to be a third that happened in California that no longer exists. So these two shows both sell RVs. At both shows, the manufacturers partner with dealer partners who bring all the units there, and they sell the units on the lots. At both shows, there are many, many debuts of new products. So in September, you often get new model year stuff. And in January in Florida, you often get stuff that is sort of mid-model year or prototype stuff that's a little bit further out, that's going to be a while. It just depends on when that stuff was designed. Sometimes there's new stuff that they don't show at Hershey in the fall because they don't want the other brands to see it before they get it out to dealer lots. There's a whole lot of politics involved in this, but bottom line, they are both huge shows. There are a few more rigs at Hershey, not a ton more, but there are more rigs usually presented at Hershey. It's still an overwhelming amount of RVs at both shows. More people go to the Florida show. So I think both have an argument to being the largest RV show. The Hershey show, his official name is America's largest RV show or something like that. Tampa, just by the nature of the buyers that are there, because it's Florida in the winter where a lot of snowbirds are, is really it's really where there's a lot of money exchanging hands, a lot of people on site and interested in buying some of the bigger and more expensive rigs in Florida. So I think it's totally fair to call it the Super Bowl of RV shows, particularly because it happens a couple weeks before the Super Bowl, which is kind of why I made that reference. Regardless, things are a little bit more complicated in all this. There is no Super Bowl of RV shows. It's just something I said, and we can have a little fun with it. That was a lot of fun. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while now. Let me know what you think about this. Is this something I should continue doing? I've thought about maybe doing it once a month or so, like as a live stream. That might be a fun idea to do, to have people even comment back and further questions and all that sort of stuff. But let me know if you like videos like this, if this is something I should keep doing, if it's something I shouldn't. If you got something out of it, hit the like button. If you want more like it, subscribe and consider becoming a Mile Marker member. Mile Marker support is just the greatest thing for us. It really helps us get everything we need to get done and gives us all the support that we need. All of the money that we spend on equipment and the website and everything. Mile Markers really help pay for all of that sort of stuff. And we really appreciate their support. It's $7 a month. $70 a year. You get some extra bonus content, like some extra podcasts from Abby and I. I do a news roundup email, nothing that is essential. There was a question on last week's video about whether I'm hiding information behind a paywall. No, it's just fun. Like, this is a community of RVers to hang out and have a bit of fun. If you like what we do and you want to support it, you can come join us. We have a Mile Marker Facebook group and a lot of fun stuff that we plan on doing in the future. So I hope you'll consider it. Otherwise, just liking the video, just being here and watching it is all the support I really need. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.